Some stories begin with a thunderclap. Others begin with a whisper. Frank and Symphony's story began with a shared smile on a Tuesday afternoon just north of Detroit. The sun was warm that day, the kind of warmth that makes you believe good things are possible. Frank was fixing a bicycle chain, his hands greasy and stained. Symphony walked by carrying a bag of groceries that was just a little too heavy. A can of peaches slipped from the top and rolled right to his feet. He looked up. She looked down. And in that simple moment, a connection was made. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was just life, unfolding as it does. They didn't have much, those two. Their first apartment was small, with windows that rattled when the wind blew. They furnished it with second-hand finds and a lot of hope. Frank worked long hours at a local garage, his knuckles always bruised, his spirit always kind. Symphony painted, filling canvases with bright, swirling colours that seemed to hold all her dreams. They would eat dinner on mismatched plates, talking about their day, about their future. It was a simple life built on small kindnesses and shared laughter. They were young and the world felt like a wide open road, and they were happy to be walking it together. Their love was not loud or flashy. It was quiet and steady, like a small flame that warms a cold room. They found joy in the little things, a walk in the park on a crisp autumn day, sharing a single scoop of ice cream on a hot summer night. The way Frank would hum off-key while washing the dishes, and the way Symphony would laugh, a sound like wind chimes. They learned each other's rhythms, the unspoken language that exists between two people who truly care. They were building a life, brick by brick, with the simple tools of love and hard work. Life was a lesson, and they were eager students. They learned that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about being there. It was about listening. It was about knowing when to hold a hand and when to just be silent. Their days were a collection of these small, precious moments. They didn't know what the future held. No one ever does. But in the quiet comfort of their little apartment, with the city humming outside, they felt like they had everything they could ever need. They had each other. And for a time, that was more than enough. Then, one day, everything changed. The world tilted on its axis. A new life entered their small world. A tiny soul with her mother's eyes and her father's quiet strength. They named her Mika. Her arrival was like the first note of a beautiful song. Suddenly, their small apartment didn't feel so small anymore. It felt full of wonder, full of purpose. Frank would hold her in his arms, this tiny, perfect person, and feel a love so big it almost hurt. He would look at her sleeping in her crib and understand that his life was no longer just his own. It was hers too. Parenthood is a beautiful struggle. Frank and Symphony learned this quickly. They were always tired. They were often broke. But they were happy. Oh, they were so happy. Their days became a blur of feeding times and diaper changes, of sleepless nights and first smiles. Frank learned how to soothe a crying baby at 3 a.m. Symphony learned to function on just a few hours of sleep. They were a team navigating this new, wonderful and exhausting chapter of their lives. The canvases gathered dust in the corner, and the garage felt 1,000,000 miles away. Their world was now measured in the coos and cries of their daughter. Mika was their son. Everything revolved around her. Frank would come home from work, tired and sore, and all the weariness would melt away the moment he saw her face. He would make silly faces just to hear her giggle, a sound that was pure magic. Symphony would sing to her, soft and sweet lullabies that filled the room with peace. They watched her grow, marking every milestone, her first word, her first step. Each moment was a treasure they stored in their hearts. They were no longer just Frank and Symphony. They were Mika's parents. It was the most important job they would ever have. But being a young parent is like walking a tightrope. You are filled with an incredible joy, but also a constant worry. Are you doing it right? Are you enough? Frank and Symphony leaned on each other, finding strength in their shared experience. They were learning and growing right alongside their daughter. Their love story had a new main character, and she had stolen the show. They were a family. A small, imperfect and beautiful family. And in the middle of it all was Mika. a tiny beacon of hope, a reminder of the good in the world. Life, however, has its own seasons, and sometimes, without warning, the warmth of summer gives way to a long and difficult winter. The bright colours on Symphony's canvases began to dim. The music in her heart started to fade. A sadness settled over her, a quiet, heavy fog that Frank couldn't seem to lift, no matter how hard he tried. Mental health is a silent struggle, a battle fought inside one's own mind. It changed things. The easy laughter in their apartment grew quiet. The shared smiles became rare. Frank watched the woman he loved retreat into a place he couldn't reach. The breakup wasn't a single, dramatic event. It was a slow, painful drifting apart, like two ships heading in different directions. There were tears. There were difficult conversations held in hushed tones while Mika slept. It was a heartbreak for both of them. Symphony, needing to find her own way back to the light, eventually moved out. She started a new relationship, trying to build a new life for herself. Frank's world, once so full and certain, was suddenly fractured. He was now a father navigating a new, unfamiliar map, one where home was no longer a single place for his daughter. Frank's heart ached. There is a specific kind of pain reserved for a parent who must share their child. He worried about Mika. Would she be okay? Would she feel torn between two homes? He felt a pang of jealousy seeing Symphony with her new partner, a stranger who was now part of his daughter's life. But more than anything, he felt a deep, quiet resolve. He knew he had to be strong. He had to be the constant for Mika. His love for her had to be an anchor in these shifting tides. His role as her father hadn't ended, it had just changed shape. And so he adapted. He learned the rhythm of split parenting. The handoffs on Sunday evenings, the phone calls on Wednesdays. He packed Mika's little backpack with her favourite toys and a change of clothes, a small act that felt heavy with meaning. He learned to swallow his pride and his pain, focusing only on what was best for his daughter. He made his home a sanctuary for her, a place of peace and unconditional love. He was still her dad. That was the one thing that would never, ever change. The music of their family had changed, but his part of the song remained. In the quiet moments, when it was just the two of them, Frank and Mika built their own special world. Their time together became sacred. They would build magnificent forts out of blankets and chairs, creating castles where they were the king and the princess. They would have pancake breakfast for dinner just because they could. He would read her bedtime stories, using different voices for all the characters, until her eyelids grew heavy and she drifted off to sleep. In these simple, ordinary moments, Frank found his greatest joy. He was not just a weekend dad, he was her dad every single day. His love was patient. It was a quiet strength that wrapped around Mika like a warm blanket. He taught her how to ride her bike, running alongside her with a steadying hand on the seat, shouting encouragement until she finally pedaled away on her own. He listened to her stories about her other home, about her mom and her new partner, and he never let his own feelings cast a shadow on her happiness. He wanted her to feel whole, to know that she was loved completely in both her homes. His love was not a thing to be divided. It was a thing that could expand. Uncertainty remained a quiet guest in Frank's life. He didn't know what the future would look like. He didn't know if the ache in his heart would ever fully go away, but he had hope. He saw it in Mika's bright eyes. He heard it in her laughter. He felt it when she wrapped her small arms around his neck for a hug. Hope was not a grand promise of a perfect future. It was the simple belief that as long as he had his daughter and she had him, they would be okay. Love, he was learning, is the most resilient thing in the world. A family can change its shape. It can break and bend and be put back together in a new way. But a parent's love does not end. It endures. Frank's journey was not the one he had imagined on that sunny Tuesday afternoon so many years ago. It was harder. It was more complicated. But it was still beautiful because at the center of it all was Mika. And for her, he would keep singing his father's song, a quiet, steady and unending melody of love, loss and hope, always.